Thank you very much, Director Watson, and a very pleasant good morning to all of you joining us today. Today, we have gathered experts and practitioners to review legislative and regulatory changes and practical advances being made by professionals as it relates to financial technologies. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to speak to you about the present and future of fintech in the Bahamas as I formally welcome you to our symposium under the theme FinTech and Digital Tokens, Legislation, Regulation, and Practice in the Bahamas. This symposium is reflective of our shared vision for the ushering in of a new wave of fintech innovation in the Bahamas, establishing this nation as a regional and world leader in the sector. My ministry is fully committed to facilitating this work and collaborating with our partners, agencies, industry stakeholders, and leaders to ensure that we are going about this work in the most thoughtful way possible. We will continue to deliver on our mandate of advancement through innovation. As the world undergoes a period of accelerated digital transformation, the Bahamas will not be left behind. We are a small nation that has consistently punched above our weight in many respects when it comes to financial services, and there is no reason for fintech to be any different. The government's recent passage of the Digital Assets and Registered Exchange Act, or DARE Act, the Securities Commission of the Bahamas' FinLink FinTech Hub, and the launch of the world's first ever central bank digital currency are proof positive of this administration's forward-thinking agenda on fintech, digital assets, and related innovations. Our objective is to stabilize our strength within the sector while continuing to expand our market share through new initiatives, attracting investors from around the world, and creating a fertile environment for domestic participation in this emerging industry. This is what the Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Industry, and Immigration has set as its focus on for the immediate and long-term future. One of the ways we will achieve this is by engaging our most important stakeholders and providing critical information so that industry stakeholders, policymakers, and regulators are all on the same page. That is why events like this one are so crucial to achieving our objectives. Last year, on May 20th, to be exact, we successfully hosted our first financial services virtual symposium. We created a blueprint for effective virtual stakeholder engagement during the pandemic with a healthy turnout of more than 350 registrants and overwhelmingly positive feedback. Today, we are building on the momentum and success, fine-tuning our approach and strengthening our engagement strategies so that we can continue to have events like this as the world adjusts to the new normal. While our first virtual symposium was focused on updating the industry as we weathered the initial shock of COVID-19, this symposium is about the future of financial services and the amazing developments that will be brought about by fintech. The Bahamas is at the vanguard of efforts to integrate and regulate financial technology and digital assets. By educating key stakeholders and the general public, we are working to raise awareness about the opportunities these new efforts can present to Bahamians. A year ago, we were at the beginning of a global crisis that changed the world as we knew it. Today, there is a lot that is still uncertain as we chart a new course in previously unexplored territories. However, one thing that is certain is that thanks to innovation in financial technology, The financial services sector is booming, and the current trajectory indicates that the continuous growth and innovation in this space will continue. The landscape of the global fintech industry is changing at the speed of light. Acceptance and integration of fintech solutions has increased rapidly over the last year. This transformation impacts everything we do today, from the way we can communicate with each other, the way we are educated, the way we experience healthcare, and above all, the way these new products and services delivery methods impact financial sector. The expected outcomes of this symposium are firstly, to increase awareness. Secondly, we anticipate that today's symposium will empower local stakeholders to engage further in fintech and the new and exciting future of financial service industry. We are encouraging stakeholders to take advantage of the opportunities available to them by highlighting professionals who have embraced and are using modern and innovative fintech capabilities to their advantage and advancing in the Bahamas and abroad. Further, in today's discussions, our experts from our regulatory entities, such as the Securities Commission and the Bahamas and the Central Bank of the Bahamas. They will discuss the DARE Act, which regulates fintech space. Additionally, leading local and regional experts will share their practical experience in the space, along with phenomenal local and international fintech professionals who will speak to the employment and entrepreneurial opportunities. In addition to representatives participating in the symposium today, we want to recognize all of our partners, including the various government ministries and agencies involved, as well as our collaborative stakeholders, including BFSB, AIBT, and others, for all that they do as we work collaboratively to build a better financial services industry. I call on you to put your most innovative ideas, best technologies, and brightest minds to work on fintech solutions for our Bahamas. Together, we will take financial services to new heights. Thank you for participating in this exciting discussion today. We hope that you will find it enlightening. Once again, welcome to the FinTech and Digital Tokens Symposium. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Johnson. Again, ladies and gentlemen, kindly accept our apologies for the slight technical difficulties that we've experienced this morning. The best laid plans, what can I say? We will continue with our summation for today. I wanted to highlight to you our discussions will be in two segments. The first will be the regulatory and legislative panel that will feature representatives from the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, who will have discussions on the development and adoption of the Digital Assets and Registered Exchange Act 2020, its facilitating opportunities, and the Securities Commission FitLink. Additionally, industry local and regional expertise will add to the conversation on fintech legislation and practices. And our second segment will be our fintech participants panel. This section will feature a cadre of Bahamian professionals, both local and international, in the fintech space. They will provide in-depth expertise and share aspects of their professional and entrepreneurial careers, covering topics such as the science behind cryptocurrencies, digital securities, educational and economic networking opportunities in fintech. The first panel discussion will be moderated by Ms. Dominique Nottage, arbitration consultant in the Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Industry and Immigration. And our second panel will be moderated by Mr. Samuel Campbell Jr., Financial and Trade Officer in the Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Industry. Without further delay, we shall begin. Ms. Nottage?
Thank you, Director Watson. It is now my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speakers for our regulatory and legal panel. Please join me in welcoming Christina Roll, Executive Director of the Securities Commission of the Bahamas. Ms. Roll has over 25 years of experience in the financial services industry, and prior to her appointment as Executive Director on the 26th of January 2015, Ms. Roll has acted as a Director and Deputy CEO for a prominent international private bank and has held various senior managerial positions with local and other international institutions, including Head of Trust and Fiduciary, Head of Risk, Compliance, and Corporate Governance, and Manager of Banking Services. Ms. Roll was a member of the FATCA Advisory Group for the Government of the Bahamas and has served on the Board of Directors of the Bahamas Financial Services Board between 2009 and 2012. She's also served on the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners Bahamas Branch Board from 2003 to 2005. In March 2020, Ms. Roll was elected Vice Chair of the Inter-American Regional Committee of the International Organization of Securities Commission for a 2-year term. As Vice Chair of IARC, Ms. Roll is a member of the Board of Directors of IOSCO. In April 2020, Ms. Roll was appointed to the Bahamas' Economic Recovery Committee by Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert A. Minnis, to make recommendations to the Cabinet on the long-term economic recovery of the Bahamas, including job creation and stimulating small business recovery and development in response to the COVID-19 global pandemic. Ms. Roll also holds a Master's of Business Administration from the Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University, and is an alumna of Harvard Business School. We'll also be joined today by Mr. Christian Adderley. He joined the Securities Commission of the Bahamas in 2012 and is the head of the Policy and Research Unit in the Office of the Executive Director. Christian also holds or leads the Commission's financial technology initiatives, including the SCB FitLink, a unit within OED that serves as the central point of contact for the Commission's engagement with the public on various FinTech and innovation issues. At the Commission, he has assisted in the development and implementation of numerous pieces of legislation, including the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Act, DARE 2020. He has also recently returned from a 2-year secondment to the U.S. Securities and Exchanges Commission Office of International Affairs in Washington, D.C., where he assisted in the cross-border work of the SEC, including drafting supervisory cooperation agreements with foreign regulators. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the Sykes School of Business at the University of Tampa and a master's of business administration with honors from the University of Miami. He is an HSK Level 4 Mandarin speaker. While Ms. Allen is not joining us live today, it would be remiss of us not to properly introduce her. Ms. Aaliyah Allen is a partner in the firm's financial services, private client, trust, and estates practice groups at Graham Thompson. She rejoined Graham Thompson in February 2016, following 4 years as CEO and Executive Director of the Bahamas Financial Services Board. Her practice is primarily focused in banking, investment funds, securities, securitization and capital markets, technology, fintech, blockchain, and digital assets, and regulatory matters such as FATCA, CRS, AML, and CFT. Ms. Allen has played a leading role in the development and revision of industry-defining legislation, including the Investment Funds Act 2019, the Investment Condominium Act, and crafting and promoting policy initiatives on fintech, blockchain, and other digital assets. Finally, we have Ms. Grace Lindo, who is a commercial and intellectual property lawyer based in Kingston, Jamaica. She's a co-founding partner of the law firm Carter Lindo. She has worked with local and international clients in a diverse range of sectors, looking to do business in Jamaica or Jamaican entities with regional or international corporate aspirations. Her practice covers commercial law, intellectual property, technology and technology transactions, e-commerce, trade, regulatory matters, cybersecurity, data protection, corporate governance, and mergers and acquisitions. Ms. Lindo is a Chevening Scholar, and she attended the London School of Economics and Political Science, from which she attained a Master's of Law in Competition, Trade, and Innovation with a focus on technology regulation. Ms. Lindo has been consistently ranked as a leading trademark professional in the Caribbean by the World Trademark Review since 2014. She is a certified information privacy professional, an accreditation given by the International Association of Privacy Professionals, and was an ICANN Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers Fellows for the years 2017 to 2019. She currently sits on the Legislation and Regulations Committee of the Jamaican Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Commercial and Intellectual Property Committees of the Jamaican Bar Association. Before we get into the meat of the panel, I just want to remind each of you that the panelists will be given an opportunity to speak on their respective topics, and thereafter we will pose questions to the panel to generate a roundtable discussion. Remember, if you have any questions that you would like the panelists to respond to, please use the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom window and direct the question to the host. So firstly, Ms. Roll will present on the role of the Securities Commission in the development and adoption of DARE Act 2020. Secondly, Mr. Adderley will present on the DARE Act 2020 facilitating opportunities and SBC's Fit Link. Thirdly, again, Ms. Allen, who is unable to join us live due to an unavoidable conflict, but was kind enough to send in her presentation pre-recorded, will speak on the current legal and regulatory framework and the implications of the DARE Act in practice. And finally, Ms. Lindo will present on a regional perspective on FinTech legislation. Ms. Roll, if you are ready to begin, we're happy to welcome you.
Yes, I'm ready. Okay, I was hoping my video would be on, but let me just share my screen. Okay, I think I have to reshare. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can see it.
You're good.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Theomonique. Thank you once again to the Minister of Financial Services, Trade and Industry, Immigration, the Honorable Ellsworth Johnson, Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Janet Miller, Director, Mrs. Deborah Watson, colleague panelists and presenters, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am pleased to be part of this morning's symposium about the legislation, regulation, and practices surrounding FinTech and digital tokens in the Bahamas. Thank you, Ministry of Financial Services and Mrs. Deborah Watson in particular for reaching out to Christian and me to participate in this symposium. We are pleased for opportunities to discuss the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Act 2020, or DARE, which I'll frequently refer to in this presentation. Effective the 14th of December last year, the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Act 2020 came into operation. With the promulgation of the act, the Bahamas became one of a growing number of jurisdictions in the world with an established formal legal framework to regulate. Okay, so I think we heard someone in a meeting, but let me just try to go back to what I was referring to. So the act came into force on the 14th of December last year, and with the promulgation of the act, the Bahamas became one of the few jurisdictions in the world to establish a formal legal framework to regulate the issuance, sale, and trade of digital assets. With a thoughtful, internationally compliant legal framework in place, the Bahamas is positioned to develop a well-regulated digital assets and related services industry for both local and international operators. This morning, I'll touch on the development of the Act and delve a little into some key things the Act does and who it applies to. So for a brief background, as the statutory regulator of the capital markets in the Bahamas, the Commission has been paying careful attention to the digital asset space for several years now. We observe the potential the space represents for our wealth management industry to grow and the threat represented should it be left behind. We also fielded intense interest in Bahamas-based digital asset businesses and saw the need to provide legal clarity for operators, facilitate well-regulated and compliant business, while executing our overarching mandate to protect investors, ensure market integrity, and reduce systemic risk. A little over 2 years ago, the Commission set out to develop a world-class legal framework for this growth area. I'm pleased to say much of the development work was performed internally. The Commission's Policy and Research Unit conducted the initial benchmarking exercise, and then we later engaged a leading international consultant to support us in the research phase. The consultant also performed benchmarking, and in all 13 jurisdictions were benchmarked. Christian Adderley, who will present on this panel after me, was also intrinsically involved in the development of the legislation, responsible for monitoring industry expectations and evolving international regulatory standards. The principal drafter of the legislation was Ms. Odessa Gibson, the Commission's legal counsel. Congratulations and thanks to all the Commission staff, especially Sharon Munnings, who was particularly involved in the development of the legislation. With DARE's implementation, the legal framework in the Bahamas now accomplishes some critical things. It defines what constitutes digital asset business and hence would trigger registration under DARE. This includes digital token exchanges and the provision of related services to such exchanges. This includes the provision of distributed ledger technology or DLT platforms and the provision of financial services related to the offer or sale of a digital asset. Non-fungible tokens, electronic representations of fiat currency or virtual currencies, security tokens, and certain other types of tokens are expressly exempted from the Act. DARE defines the Commission's functions and powers with respect to the Act, including powers to perform investigations and to cooperate with other regulatory authorities in order to execute its regulatory functions. In fact, the Act is replete with a cadre of penalties for failure to comply. I highlight here that DARE empowers the Commission to suspend or revoke registration in certain circumstances, such as where it is in the public interest to do so. Allow me to very briefly touch on a few elements related to who, oh, hold on, I moved forward too quickly. Sorry. Allow me to very briefly touch on a few elements related to who may participate under DARE. The Act requires all persons carrying on or involved in digital asset businesses operating in or from the Bahamas to be registered or licensed. This includes natural persons, companies, partnerships, trusts, and any other legal entity. Note the founders, beneficial owners, security holders, directors, and officers of digital assets business must be identified pursuant to the Act. DARE requires registrants to maintain professional conduct, meet all financial requirements that may be prescribed, and comply with the Act. Examples of professional conduct requirements include duties to act honestly and fairly, to have effective corporate governance arrangements in place, to refrain from proper or illegal conduct, and to have effective arrangements in place to protect client assets and money. Regarding financial requirements, after careful deliberation, the Commission will prescribe these, and they are likely to include professional insurance in order to foster investor protection and encourage industry stability. I wish to highlight that as a feature of DARE, financial institutions already licensed or registered with the Commission may apply for registration of the additional digital asset business service they are contemplating, rather than applying for a registration as a digital asset business. We anticipate this will ease the business process for current registrants and licensees. Finally, I note the activities of wallet service provider and custody of digital assets are incorporated in the FCSPA 2020 as licensable financial services representing digital asset businesses opportunities for local as well as international entrepreneurs. DARE was developed to take into account AML-CFT standards, in particular, the Financial Action Task Force Recommendation 15 on new technology. The recommendation involves the identification and assessment of risk related to new products and business practices and new and developing technologies. Under the recommendation, such risks must be assessed by financial institutions prior to launch of the product, service, technology, etc. And there must be proper management and mitigation plans and practices in place. At the country level, service providers must be regulated for AML-CFT compliance and licensed or registered in accordance with FATF recommendations. The recommendation and its extensive explanatory notes were carefully examined to ensure the Act was in compliance. Related to this, DARE requires digital assets businesses to have systems in place to prevent, detect, and disclose money laundering, terrorist financing, and suspicious transactions, and subjects them to the requirements of the Proceeds of Crime Act 2018, the Anti-Terrorism Act 2019, and the Financial Transactions Reporting Act 2018. Each of these acts was amended with the passage of DARE to include digital asset businesses as financial institutions. There are a few final areas I want to touch on briefly. The first is data protection. Data protection is a vitally important element of digital asset businesses. DARE addresses data protection by requiring registrants to meet the provisions of the Data Protection Privacy of Information Act for customers' personal data. Also, I want to point out that the Commission will introduce a register of digital asset businesses, which will be accessible for viewing on the Commission's website. This is an important transparency feature which will allow investors and the public to see the names and addresses of digital assets businesses registered with the Commission, the licenses or registrations held, including foreign licenses or registrations, the names of the principals, directors, and other persons with management control, and any conditions imposed by the Commission. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the conclusion of this brief overview of the DARE legislation. Thank you for listening, and I look forward very much to your question and answers. I hope then we can get into the meat of some of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roll, for that insight into the role of the Securities Commission Bahamas with the DARE Act 2020. Mr. Adderley, we would be happy for you to build on that foundation that Ms. Roll has set, if you're ready to begin.
Yes, good morning. Happy to do so. Can everyone hear me well? Good. And can everyone see the screen? No. Perfect. Fair enough. Protocol having been established, thank you, Ms. Nottage, for the very kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you today. Now that you have been informed about the developmental history and purpose of the DARE Act, during my presentation, I will briefly outline 3 opportunities that we believe the Act provides for financial technology innovators. And finally, I will introduce you to the Commission's newest innovation, SCB FitLink, our FinTech hub. Incidentally, I should express that the views that I express here today are my own and may not necessarily reflect the views of the Commission, board members, management, or staff. Historically, finance and technology have always been co-developmental, as your credit card and a snack vending machine, often mentioned as the precursor to the modern-day smart contract, demonstrate. Today, fintech is profound and has the potential to facilitate the launching of revolutionary products and improve access to capital for many businesses. However, oh, sorry, I need to expand my presentation, I'm told. Forgive me. Is that better? Okay, great. All right, I'm told that that's better. Okay. Apologies. Not better? Okay. Forgive me. What am I doing?
Just need to
All right. Apologies. Let's start again. So now that you've been informed about the developmental history and purpose of the DARE Act, during my presentation, I will briefly outline 3 opportunities that we believe the Act provides for financial technology innovators. And finally, I will introduce you to the Commission's newest innovation, SCB FitLink, our FinTech hub. Again, the views that I express here today are my own and may not necessarily reflect the views of the Commission, board members, management, or staff. Historically, finance and technology have always been co-developmental, as your credit card and a snack vending machine, often mentioned as the precursor to the modern-day smart contract, demonstrate. Today, FinTech is profound and has the potential to facilitate the launching of revolutionary products and improve access to capital for many businesses. However, despite all the promise of digital assets, they are still volatile, and users can still be saddled with unpredictable transaction costs when using them. The result is that digital assets have not yet amassed sufficient scalability and convenience to use in everyday transactions. An important opportunity that the DARE Bill provides is to develop a digital asset that not only performs the 3 functions of money, but also that can be used easily, conveniently, and virtually anywhere. A stable coin, perhaps. Stablecoins, as their name implies, are specifically designed to overcome the inherent volatility in digital assets by maintaining a stable value, usually by tying the digital currency to an asset or a basket of assets. The coin can then be used to conduct transactions with minimal loss of purchasing power. Moreover, stablecoins can improve financial inclusion, particularly in the Bahamas, in places where financial institutions, for legitimate business considerations, may elect not to establish a physical presence. Residents will not then be disadvantaged by the lack of a central institution, as they can access a stablecoin to negotiate payments. Today, the estimated value of stablecoins is approximately $20 billion, reflecting the growing demand of investors looking to seek alternative investment and payment service opportunities. Unfortunately, COVID-19 and all its insidious effects seems to be a part of our life, perhaps forever. As more of us stay home, use delivery apps to order food, and watch internet-based TV applications, there will be a shift to using digital forms of payment. But a digital asset's potential will only be realized to the extent that there are efficient and convenient platforms to facilitate payments. The DARE Act offers another opportunity then for the development of application programming interfaces, APIs, and similar digital platforms. APIs allow software programs to talk to each other and can increase payment options that merchants are able to accept. As merchants expand or establish business operations, especially in places where there is no central institution, such as a bank, they will rely on APIs to facilitate the acceptance of multiple forms of payment, both digital and fiat, including the sand dollar, the central bank digital currency. Adyen, perhaps the most prominent payment API/platform in the world, is valued at approximately $2.4 billion, showing the current and future potential benefits of designing these platforms. Now, I'm aware that in order for businesses to develop worthwhile products, securing capital is paramount. In this post-2008 financial era, businesses have difficulty in securing funding from banks, especially SMEs and fintech startups, which are often perceived as too risky. The DARE Act then provides an opportunity for entrepreneurs to solicit the public for business capital in the form of an initial token offering. This is not an insignificant development. Globally, in 2019, $7.8 billion was raised in ITOs. This represents business capital that may not have been otherwise available to startup businesses to realize their commendable objectives. Our belief is that as more jurisdictions adopt robust digital asset legislation, combined with increased continuing investor education outreach initiatives, such as this symposium, it will portend an increasingly favorable climate for ITO fundraising in the Bahamas. At the Commission, we believe that as FinTech evolves, the regulator must engage with market participants to ensure an appropriately regulated industry. In this regard, the Commission created SCB FitLink, our FinTech hub. Launched in 2019, the hub serves as the central point of our engagement with the public on various FinTech-related issues. As part of this initiative, we meet with FinTech stakeholders and discuss our regulatory requirements and international and domestic regulatory developments. My wonderful and hardworking team in the Policy Research and Compliance Unit and the Commission's internal FinTech Committee look forward to meeting with you as you develop your business goals. During this exciting period in FinTech, we need market participants that are not only determined to create a new era of finance and inclusion, but also are willing to do so in a responsible manner, protecting our markets and ensuring the fair and equitable treatment of all investors. We look forward to collaborating with all of you during this very exciting period. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adderley, for that very informative presentation. I think you put what Ms. Roll said early in her presentation into context quite well. So we're going to continue with Ms. Allen's presentation. And just as a reminder, she was unable to make it live today because she had an unavoidable conflict with work. So we have been able to have a pre-recorded interview with her that was facilitated by Mr. Samuel Campbell Jr., our financial and trade officer, and also my co-moderator for today. Ms. Allen was most recently involved in the MasterCard Island Pay Sand Dollar linked credit card project, which was a global first. I think a lot of us would have heard about it a few weeks back. It was heavily promoted by the central bank, by MasterCard. So that's something important to remember when listening to her presentation.
Good afternoon, Aaliyah. Thank you for joining us and giving your legal expertise and insights on the space. Firstly, I would like to ask you, how did you get involved in the fintech space? You were seen as the leading attorney in this space. How did you first get involved?
Well, thank you, Sam. That's very kind of you. I don't know whether I would necessarily agree with that, but I will take it. So really about 4 years ago, we had our sort of first interaction with a client that wanted us to complete a regulatory kind of review of, the Bahamas' framework actually for payments. And there was some sort of crypto aspect to it, but we really didn't have much background in the space, and so it required a lot of research, a lot of interaction with regulators, and a lot of benchmarking, and that's really what kind of piqued my interest, at least, and led me to sort of research it more. And then I wrote a paper in 2018 called "The Bahamas' Place in a Cryptographic World." And that paper was actually referenced by the U.S. Library of Congress because they were themselves doing a benchmarking of the treatment of crypto in different jurisdictions. And then from there, I just thought that the Bahamas really had some cards to play in this space because of our history in financial services, because of our interconnectivity, and I thought it was really the frontier and something that the Bahamas should certainly be at the forefront of. And so I sort of got involved, in the BFSB FinTech group. Started, and we were sort of active on the advocacy in trying to get DARE passed, and I think that's why I'm here today.
Yeah. Okay, so we know you've been at the forefront and trying to push Bahamas forward. What are some of the projects you've worked on in the space so far? Tell us a bit more about those projects.
Sure. I mean, I'll tell you what I can tell you.
Right.
Keeping yeah, of course. When we sort of first got into the space, there was a lot of interest on the ICO front, and obviously, that had fallen off quite a bit. But certainly when we first were talking to prospective clients, it was on, what is the framework in the Bahamas? Is there a framework? How do you set up a company in the Bahamas to do this? And what are the regulatory implications for doing this in the Bahamas? And then increasingly it was, what kind of fiduciary structures can we use in the Bahamas to assist with token offerings? So, we worked on a stablecoin project where we used, Purpose Trust and various other things. We started working with crypto funds or funds that had crypto strategies. And we've done quite a number of those now. And interestingly, we've kind of grown with the fund because those funds started very small in terms of assets under management. But with all the institutional money and interest coming into crypto now, they're actually quite large funds. And so we've been sort of growing with them and helping them to sort of manage the influx of cash into their funds, and deploy those so that they can deploy those crypto strategies. So it's really kind of transitioned from sort of strictly kind of how do I incorporate a company to how do I, what vehicles do you have to facilitate, essentially, making gains. And then increasingly also interest from exchanges and wallet providers. But I think that that's sort of the trend of what we've seen, certainly in the last year.
Great. It sounds like it's been quite busy.
Yeah, it has been fairly busy.
Right.
I think when we were having a talk earlier, I mentioned that DARE was just recently passed, and it was passed in the context of a pandemic. So really, people are just now getting their brains around what it means for the Bahamas and how we utilize it going forward.
Right. So based on that, DARE has just passed, and the current overall legal and regulatory framework. How do you think? What are your thoughts on it? And how do you think? Do you think it allows for sufficient growth and innovation? Because people always talk about the balance between proper regulation and the proper legal framework, and they're not restricting growth and innovation in the space. So from your perspective, how do you think we've done so far, and what ways maybe can we improve?
I think certainly when we were conducting sort of early advocacy efforts, trying to raise sort of in industries, raise the profile of the sector, to regulatory attention. We were advocating for a flexible framework, like a sandbox, like a regulatory sandbox, and there were sandboxes you could look at in other jurisdictions, and we were very much advocating for that. What we got was not a regulatory sandbox, but it was legislation that we think is flexible enough in terms of the Commission also having rulemaking powers, guidelines to facilitate, innovation in the sector, and I think that the Commission will probably explain the reasons why they chose law instead of a sandbox. Certainly, we had some clients who had experiences with sandboxes, and they said, frankly, they would have preferred to have more clarity in regulations. So, and we've also had clients that said something completely different, but certainly there are two views on it. And I think that the Bahamas chose the path that was right for it. But I think, in sort of working, in the sector, and looking at DARE, I think there's still some things that we have to do as a jurisdiction. I think the first thing is sorting out if there is any tension. And I'm not suggesting there is tension, but if there is any tension between, the central bank's remit in terms of payment instruments and DARE as it relates to cryptocurrencies, because obviously there is, some potential overlap. When I was looking at this, and I was looking at the central bank issued a paper on the regulation of cryptocurrencies, I think sometime in 2018. They referenced the fact that the payment instruments oversight regulations certainly did not technically contemplate everything it needed to contemplate in order to create a framework. And so it now seems that we have a framework, but I think that perhaps some clarity is necessary in terms of what neatly falls within the central bank's remit, and what neatly falls within the Securities Commission's remit. I think the second thing that we need is some clarity on exchange control. Certainly, we know what the central bank's view is. What we are hoping is that we have a flexible enough position that it doesn't restrict activity and innovation in the sector by Bahamians. Because obviously we want to create a sector that's welcoming of everyone, but we certainly want Bahamians to participate fully. And also to be able to access crypto holdings, right? So I think that's another area for progress. I think the third thing is really DARE creates a wonderful framework. We think there probably needs to be a fairly robust code of practice as it relates to custody. and also as it relates to sort of data protection. So the Bahamas is going through a sort of update of its framework when it comes to cybersecurity laws and data protection laws. And I think that when you look at our Data Protection Act, and that it is really not fit for purpose in the context of DARE. But the good thing is, I think that that's something that is high on the priority list of government. And then I think finally, it's just, perhaps some clarity on, on business capital. And for people wanting to register additional asset business, what does that look like? From the regulator's perspective, where does the risk lie? We're used to having, in the financial services context, broker-dealers having, broker-dealers and banks having fairly significant capital requirements. And financial and corporate services providers, on the other hand, having sort of much more flexible requirements for business capital. So it's just some of that detail I think is certainly necessary. And that's really my main wish list. Of course, there are other things that the jurisdiction needs to focus on in terms of ease of doing business. But really, those are my main wish list items.
Okay, great. I think you left us a lot to think about, and I'm sure there'll be questions that'll come in, and hopefully we'll have another forum for you to be able to come and discuss further with persons who are interested in the space. But thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you on future forums similar to this, discussing how we can advance the fintech space and financial services in the Bahamas generally. So thank you again.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much to Aaliyah for taking the time out to provide us with that pre-recorded interview type presentation. And I think that a lot of her comments put into context what the Bahamas' current status is and the work that we have to do to keep pace and advance further in the fintech space. So now we're going to have Ms. Lindo, and she will give us a better understanding of how this all works regionally and in relation to information and privacy laws. So the first question I have for Ms. Lindo is, how have regulatory sandboxes helped to advance the regulatory frameworks in other jurisdictions?
All right. Firstly, Ms. Nottage, thank you very much for having me, and to your ministry, and to all of you in the Bahamas. Thank you very much for having me this morning to present a regional perspective, even though it may be more skewed towards Jamaica, because hey, that's where I'm from. So how have regulatory sandboxes worked? They have worked successfully in quite a few jurisdictions. I really appreciated Aaliyah's presentation before this, in which she highlighted that some of her prospective clients looked forward to a sandbox, and some people thought that it didn't really help them. I think in jurisdictions such as ours, and when I say ours, I mean our entire Caribbean region, we are always looking over our shoulders at what the OECD may think, or what other international regulators may think when it comes to AML. And so the persons who we allow within our financial sector, that's very important. And I think a sandbox really allows us to have that balance, to have that sort of oversight of new persons, innovators, the startups that may come into the space, while at the same time allow the existing parties to perhaps partner if possible. So I'm not sure if you have any additional questions, but I wanted to, before I go on to your other questions, perhaps on privacy, etc., talk a bit about how FinTech has been operating throughout the Caribbean. And firstly, let me say congratulations to the Bahamas in passing your act. I learned quite a bit this morning. I did have a look at the act, but I learned quite a bit, and I'll be having another look at it, given the experiences that you have set out. Again, us here in the Caribbean have been looking at really not decentralized fintech, but fintech in the sense of public-private partnerships, or central banks who still want to be involved. You know, and again, that's quite understandable given our position here in the Caribbean. For us here in Jamaica, the Bank of Jamaica has opened up guidelines under which the same regulatory sandbox is supposed to operate. And that guideline, or those guidelines, come under our Payment and Clearance, you know, Act, that we Clearing and Settlement Act that we have here in Jamaica. We do focus on consumer protection, and we do focus on exit and entry into the system. You know, we are concerned about the innovators not being fit and proper persons. That's something, again, AML just requires us to just bring our standards up quite a bit. And so we do require persons who do not have expertise or who are not licensed already to partner with a deposit taking institution called a DTI within Jamaica. Further afield, Barbados just last week tabled a payment systems legislation, and I think it was approved by their Senate. So they're quite a bit ahead, but they have recognized that to have a good payments piece of legislation, you also need to have a good national ID. And so they simultaneously tabled legislation in respect of a national ID, which, just to stick a pin, we here in Jamaica have been trying to do for the last 2 years, albeit we have been hit by constitutional challenges. We do have a new iteration of that law, and we hope that it passes the bar. Otherwise, in the Caribbean, Cayman does have a statute dealing with digital assets, you know, as a jurisdiction closely associated with the UK. I'm not surprised that they're ahead in this realm, and as an international financial services jurisdiction as well. The Eastern Caribbean has implemented the EC dollar, and an EC currency too, which is, it's powered by BIT, which is, everybody knows BIT. BIT is the big fintech company out of Barbados. So they're making moves there. I think legislatively, the Caribbean is, you know, looking at people who are within the international financial services sector. So we're going to look at you, we're going to look at the Bahamas. Certainly when it comes to tokens, Jamaica has not touched that at all, and the blockchain, use of blockchain. But certainly, I think that when we get privacy right, we will be on our way. Privacy and consumer protection, if anything.
Thanks, Grace, so much for that presentation. I just have one more question for you. What are the biggest lessons that you think that the Bahamas can learn from other jurisdictions, not just limited to the Commonwealth Caribbean or the Caribbean in general, based on the jurisdictions that you did mention, to advance our financial services sector in relation to fintech outside of the connection between information, law, and privacy and data?
Right, very good question. I think we need to learn from other jurisdictions in how they have been pro-innovation and how they have used perhaps even their competition laws to ensure that the persons who already have perhaps a monopoly on financial services do not get ahead in an area in which people who are agile in terms of technology may have, you know, perhaps the lead if the regulations didn't say otherwise. When you look on the US, for instance, when you see companies like Square, which, by the way, you know, big news this morning, Square has partnered with, or has, well, I would say partnered with a music streaming company. Those sort of unconventional, you know, alliances and partnerships, I think, will be coming into the space. The more we think of technology as being the base of the sector, and finance being just really a subset of it. And I think once we take a look at how to be pro-innovation, how to let non-financial players into the system, we will flourish a lot quicker.
Thanks so much, Grace, for that. I now want to open up the questions to the rest of the panel. I know that the Securities Commission has a lot more to say, and they have a lot more questions that they would like to respond to. So the first question I have is that we know that the Commission and the draftsmen have done extensive benchmarking against other jurisdictions to develop the DARE Act. Do you consider that our DARE Act and other pieces of legislation in this space will now be used as a benchmark for other jurisdictions?
Okay, so I mean, I don't know if I can gauge that, but certainly when we did a presentation on DARE last October, we had a number of regulators in other jurisdictions who were on and who are very interested in looking at how we address particularly the FATF issues. So I imagine that any jurisdiction, especially jurisdictions in the regions or jurisdictions who consider themselves our competitors, would probably look closely at DARE and at the way we did when we approached DARE. They also would try to stay ahead of where we are. So I mean, there's always a need for continuous improvement in these areas. But while I'm speaking, I just want to address this issue of the sandbox and address the reason the Commission decided to go down the road of developing legislation, right? So first, I think we need to understand what a sandbox is from a regulatory point of view. I mean, it's not just a little fancy word, right? But a sandbox from a regulatory point of view is a framework, because it is a framework that allows businesses or allows entrance into the sandbox, because they're not exactly addressees, they're not exactly registrants, but they allow entrance into the sandbox to operate in an environment that is overseen by the regulator, but it is not directly regulated. So it's a non-regulatory environment. So when we looked at, and we benchmarked this issue extensively at the time, when we looked at jurisdictions that were famous for their sandboxes, we looked at jurisdictions like Hong Kong, Singapore. I think we may have looked at Malta and some other jurisdictions. What we found was that even jurisdictions that had a framework for a sandbox, the feedback that we got from regulators in those jurisdictions was that the sandbox wasn't in use, right? And so that told us something. And one of the messages it told us is that serious operators in this space were not interested in what would be termed as regulation light. They were interested in a proper regulatory framework. And so you will notice that one of the things we did not do with DARE is that we did not put out any regulations. And the reason for that is that regulations are very, very prescriptive, and they sort of box you in to positions. And so the reason we decided on just a framework with the Act and no regulations is because we wanted to allow that flexibility that could be achieved in a sandbox environment. And the regulator would have broad discretion to address certain things, whether through policy, but without such a prescriptive framework, okay? I hope that clarifies it and clarifies the position the Commission took.
Thank you so much, Ms. Roll. I want to put a question to Mr. Adderley so he can have an opportunity to give some feedback to the participants as well. I wanted to know, what types of digital assets have you seen the most interest in thus far? And as a Bahamian who may want to get into this space, are either of you able to explain what the process entails, as for example, how can one become registered under the Act? What are the requirements under the Act, and what should one expect?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ms. Nottage. Without question, stablecoins. Stablecoins are the new hot button topic. Initially, if stage one of financial technology was Bitcoin, and then to a lesser extent, Ethereum, now stage two of digital assets is stablecoins. And we saw that start with Facebook and Libra. about 2 years ago when they were attempting to develop a stable coin. And the reason why stable coins are now the hot button issue is two things, really. One, early in my speech, I mentioned the still volatile nature of digital assets. As seen by Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin a year ago, a week ago, as opposed to now, it can fluctuate. Stablecoins are specifically designed to mitigate that volatile nature of digital assets. So there's an inherent attraction to stablecoins. But more importantly, stablecoins can facilitate cross-border payments. And we've seen this with companies such as TransferWise, which in my view is the leader in cross-border digital payments, where electing to use a stablecoin allows you to benefit from using a blockchain, a centralized institution, where there's instant settlement, less transaction costs, but also you remove yourself from that inherent volatile nature of traditional digital coins. So I would say, without question, stable coins are the new in digital currency, if you will. And with respect to registering with the commission, yes. So the DARE bill provides a very simplified read, not regulation light, but a very simplified process by which anyone that wants to engage in what we call digital asset service providers or digital asset business can make an application to our supervisory department at the commission. It's a very straightforward application, but it's a very detailed application. And once you make that application to our supervisory department, we review the application, specifically the facts and circumstances of your proposed digital asset service business, and then ultimately render a decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adley. Thank you, Ms. Roll, and thank you, Ms. Lindo. We do have a lot of questions going on in the chat that we hope can be addressed at the end of the webinar, but in the interest of time and having to move on to the next panel, we're going to defer those until later. Again, thank you. We really enjoyed speaking with you. I think this is a good starter, a good way to whet the appetite to learn more about the DARE bill. And we know that the Securities Commission of the Bahamas is going to have a lot more to offer in the future. So the FinTech panel is up next, and it will be moderated by Mr. Samuel Campbell Jr., who is a financial and trade officer, in the Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Industry and Immigration. So Sammy, whenever you're ready to start.
Thank you, Theomonique, and a pleasant good morning. I'm excited to introduce and moderate this panel on FinTech in practice with some of the leading young minds in the space. I'm happy to firstly introduce Mr. Brian Jones, who has over 15 years of experience in investment funds, corporate governance, and financial services. Previously, he served as president and managing director of Deltec Fund Services Limited. He's also held other senior level positions throughout his career in financial services, including director and manager at internationally reputable banks, trust companies, and professional industry organizations. During which time, he developed the Smart Fund Model 007 and made significant contributions to the development of the ICON Investment Condominium Fund Investment Vehicle. Brian holds a bachelor's degree in economics from St. John's University in Minnesota. With a strong belief in continuous professional development amongst his many accolades, Brian is also a chartered alternative investment analyst, CAIA. Brian is a director and treasurer of the Bahamas Financial Services Board and has been acting in this capacity since 2012. Brian is also a member of the Board of Trustees of the University of the Bahamas, where he chairs the Investment and Finance Committee. Brian has received numerous awards and recognitions for his contribution and commitment to the investment fund sector and overall financial services industry of the Bahamas. Having lived and worked in Central America and Brazil, Brian has developed an affinity for the LATAM countries, and he speaks Spanish and is fluent in Brazilian Portuguese. Our next panelist, Mr. Marvin Colby, is the CEO and co-founder of Raise, a financial technology startup that's building Africa's NASDAQ. Raise is a startup backed by some of the best investors in the world, including MicroTraction, Binance, and 500 startups. Marvin has also serves as a fellow researcher on integrating real-world assets into blockchain protocols that have combined a total market capitalization of $2 billion and growing. Marvin is a digital securities and corporate lawyer that worked in the global emerging growth and venture technology group at Dentons, the world's largest law firm. At Dentons, Marvin builds Venture Beyond, a capital platform for startups in Dentons practice. Before Dentons, Marvin is an accomplished trader and international commercial arbitration researcher at McGill University and the Hong Kong Graduate Center of Law. He produced research for the Caribbean Court of Justice, CARICOM, and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and has performed internships working with the International Chamber of Commerce and Hong Kong International Arbitration Center. Marvin holds a Bachelor of Law and Civil Law degree from McGill University Faculty of Law, and is called as a solicitor and barrister at the Law Society of Upper Canada. Marvin is also an honors graduate from Concordia University, where he studied post-colonial theory and a cross-regional CARICOM investment agreement. Our third panelist, Dr. P. Jillian Bethel, is an entrepreneur and former obstetrician gynecologist whose fluency in Mandarin Chinese and medical skills led her to work alongside Chinese surgeons, medical research teams, and international health management teams for years before her introduction to blockchain and distributed ledger technologies as a researcher. She immersed herself in the Chinese blockchain and cryptocurrency space, eventually leaving the medical industry to pursue blockchain technology application. The marriage of her passions for blockchain tech and entrepreneurship, along with her dedication to country, prompted her to return to the Bahamas in 2018 with the goal of applying blockchain technology to the advancement and stimulation of the Bahamian economy and culture. Dr. Bethel is one of a growing number of women in the Bahamian blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, and entrepreneurial spaces, and sees it as her personal responsibility to empower more women to be involved. She's a consultant to the Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, on matters related to microcredit and digital currency. Bethel is also a member of the Economic Prosperity Committee of the Sustainable Development Goals Unit, as well as the Next Gen Economic Recovery Committee subcommittee, both formed by the Office of the Prime Minister. Jillian is a co-founder and CEO of Island Bit Limited, a Bahamian cryptocurrency startup, founded to provide a means of access to cryptocurrencies for Bahamians. Mr. Stephen Delaveau is a Bahamian economist and an authority on blockchain and fintech in the Caribbean. He is president, CEO of the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, or CBA, which is a regional NGO formed to advocate for blockchain technology and to foster its adoption through awareness and education. CBA is supported by major Caribbean blockchain companies. Stephen has led the blockchain education of software developers and has facilitated various hackathons. He continues to push to build cohorts of blockchain developers in the region. Stephen has worked in multilateral financial institutions and in grant-making foundations. He's also a co-founder of the Shift to Culture Startup Advocacy Group and the Arrow Link Ventures Business Incubator, both based in the Bahamas. Mr. Bobby Chen has an extensive background in the chartered accountant, finance, and fintech fields. His fluency in 3 languages, Chinese, English, and Spanish, has allowed him to build strong international exposure through his professional endeavors. Bobby holds a bachelor's degree in accounting, finance, and business management from Purdue University. On graduating, he began a career in the United States financial sector, but eventually returned home to the Bahamas. With a passion for fintech and digital innovation, Bobby has been an active alternative securities investor and a fervent advocate to introduce blockchain technology in the Bahamas. Was a national one. In the position of assistant manager of eSolution, Bobby serves as a project architect and the technical lead of the central bank's digital currency initiative, the Sand Dollar. So we will now like to begin the second panel on FinTech in practice. Just a friendly reminder to our panelists that I know that we are excited. We're excited to hear. I know you're excited to share your expert knowledge on the space, but we are on a time constraint. I have a lot of questions to try and get to, so please be mindful of that when giving your presentations. And for the audience, please don't forget to use the chat function for any questions you may have for the panelists that we hope to get to at the end. First, we'd like to give each panelist an opportunity to share their thoughts on the space. We will get started with Mr. Brian Jones, who has a presentation giving an overview on the economics behind cryptocurrencies and digital assets that you'd like to share with the viewers. Mr. Jones, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here this morning to share with you on the topic of the economics of digital assets. All right, sharing screen with you right now. Sorry, just one moment. Okay, there it is. Thank you very much for your patience there. So in starting my presentation about the economics of digital assets and value creation, I would really like to focus on the original digital asset, initially to give context to how value is created in this new space. Okay, so first of all, let's take a quick roll back in time and look at the history of blockchain, which is the underlying technology that undergirds the Bitcoin, right? So the concept of a cryptographically secured chain or a blockchain emerged several decades ago, okay, back in the early 90s. And this idea was continually tossed around within the cyberpunk community and the cryptographic community of developers until one day in let's say the late 90s, the concept of an e-gold emerges. They call it BitGold. This is the first concept of a cryptocurrency that really gained traction, but it didn't really gain too much traction. There was an issue that this first cryptocurrency had a problem with double spending, okay? So this is why Bitcoin really became such a big deal when the developer Satoshi Nakamoto under that alias released the Bitcoin white paper, which essentially to solve this problem of double spending. Essentially that it created the world's first truly scarce digital asset. Okay, so that is when really and truly the blockchain movement, I would say, started. And what really started to evolve over the years, if you look at back in 2010, you had the first price discovery event for Bitcoin, where 2 pieces were paid for 10,000 Bitcoins. Okay, now we in current dollar terms, we know how ridiculous that sounds, but somebody had to pick a price, okay? Now, ever since then, Bitcoin has been in a price discovery mode and has been evolving. Part of that evolution is where the technology itself has evolved tremendously with the emergence of blockchain 2.0, the introduction of Ethereum, and other sorts of more advanced blockchains, right? Creating more adoption in the space, or the opportunity for adoption. So we saw that several years ago with the emergence of institutionalized blockchain futures, Bitcoin futures, and some significant price action on the side of Bitcoin, which really got the headlines of the financial community. Okay, fast forward to today, and Bitcoin is near its all-time highs, around $50,000, and a market cap of 1 trillion. Okay, so this is really what has been driving the momentum in this space, whereby not only has regulators had to respond, but the investment community at large as well. And everyone's been trying to wrap their heads around, where does this value come from? Why is it so valuable, right? Why all of this attention on this new space? Okay, because it's all about money, right? Money moves the world. Money greases every economy. So if you look at the origins of money in the traditional sense, it was created by central banks in its modern sense, okay? And on top of that, the central banks have the authority to gain seigniorage, okay, which is basically profiting from the difference between the fiat currency value as it's issued and its cost of production. The central banks essentially earn money from the printing of money, right? And so now in the digital world, value creation is a bit different, where if you see how Bitcoins are created, they're created through a protocol called proof of work, which is really requires very significant computational power to solve cryptographic puzzles. This results in rewards. So taking a deeper dive into this whole reward system, right? Or you can think of it as a minting system, or even the typical seigniorage that central banks enjoy. The reward for mining Bitcoin, it decreases by 50% every 4 years. It's called the halving. So since its inception, right, when you can see here 50 Bitcoins were issued for every block. Every 4 years, this amount fell. And again, every 4 years, this halving or the reduction of its inflation rate by 50% has had a significant impact on the economics of Bitcoin, okay? And just to kind of put it in a little better perspective, that basically every 10 minutes, 6.25 Bitcoins are awarded. That adds up to almost, let's say roughly $1 billion as of January per month in revenue to miners. Okay, so the entire structure of seigniorage has now evolved in this space, okay? And this ties in directly to inflation. So if you look at the rate of inflation for Bitcoin now, it's constantly been falling over these years. While it cannot be said as anti-inflationary, it's certainly a deflationary asset in the sense that its rate of inflation continuously falls. And currently, its rate of inflation since the last halving has actually fallen less than the target inflation rate for the US, less than 2% for the first time. And this is another factor which we expect to have dramatic increase on the value of this new digital asset. Okay, another thing that's really exacerbating inflation has been all of the money printing and spending in the US, which really is caught on all around the world. And these are really impacting the true, or I say the real value of the dollar in relative terms. So again, Bitcoin is increasing against the dollar tremendously. So you see the total number of Bitcoin in circulation, it has steadily increased over time, but this rate is going to fall because there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, and there's already 18.5 in circulation. And several million is estimated that are actually locked out of circulation forever, whether they've been lost or just cannot be obtained or moved. So that being the case, you can see why the market price has also been going up. Everyone's seeing that, so that's not news. Market cap as well, first time over $1 trillion in its history. Okay, seeing all-time highs. The number of unique addresses that are trading Bitcoin, active wallets, is increasing tremendously, very, very rapidly. And you can see it goes in cycles, and we're starting to peak once again. Looking at the hash rate, this is the number of terahashes per second in the Bitcoin network that has to be performed per day, which reflects the amount of computational power seeking to mine Bitcoin. So you can see that the rate, the demand for mining Bitcoin is going up commensurately with the price gains, right? But ironically, it's still going up even though network difficulty is also increasing, making it that much harder. You have to spend that much more energy to mine a block of Bitcoin, yet it's still increasing, right? And that being the case, mining revenue is also still increasing with all of this demand. Another interesting observation here is that total transaction fees are continuing to increase with the volume. So it's actually getting more expensive at times depending on market volume and congestion to actually do transactions, yet the volume is still increasing, okay? Let's take a closer look at the metrics here that really drive the economics behind Bitcoin. Even the fees per transaction are increasing, meaning that people entering the market, buying Bitcoin right now, are willing to pay a huge premium on Bitcoin. I think in certain countries right now, there's this over $10,000 difference in the price of Bitcoin simply because of demand and supply. Okay, the amount of transactions that are actually being conducted every 10 minutes that are locked into each block on the Bitcoin, the volume of each block size is also increasing. So generally, every metric that we look at for Bitcoin is on an uptrend. Okay, so if Bitcoin was a publicly traded company, it would be sitting somewhere between Tesla and Apple. If it was a country, it would be sitting somewhere between Switzerland and the US. So we're talking about a very significant asset that's not moving in tandem with traditional markets. Only at times of extreme volatility, you see Bitcoins maintain a high correlation with traditional assets. But as you can see here, from stocks to bonds, the REITs, golds, and even another end of the spectrum, emerging market securities, Bitcoin still enjoys a relatively low correlation across the board. So just in wrapping up, I want to highlight that there's not just Bitcoin in the space. There's a lot of altcoins in the space, or alternatives to Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, and the like. You've heard of them. And one of the main drivers of value in this space is the fact that technology is now disintermediating intermediaries, right? Who basically sit in economic rent-seeking positions in the financial rails and infrastructure, and essentially do cause a lot of friction along the way as gatekeepers. So now, with a different approach, technology can serve that purpose by offering smart contracts where law can become code and govern transactions. This can be organized from the bottom up, so you don't have high and mighty powerful financial institutions dictating how things should go. This has always been a bottom-up movement, and this is always touching new trends in the global economy. Shared economy is designed really to support the new trends in the economy, and for that reason, the velocity of value is actually increasing over time. And relative to the dollar, you see the US dollar has fallen against Bitcoin over a certain period of time. I just want to wrap up by just taking a final closer look at inflation and the monetary debasement. Even looking at gold, major fiat currencies have fallen steadily against gold over the past 100 years. And if you look in the last couple of months here, we've taken another sharp downturn in terms of debasement. All right. So the point I'm trying to make with that is that there's unintended consequences and implications for countries like the Bahamas, and with US dollar-based exchange rate or national debt regimes. And this means we tend to import US inflationary pressures, monetary debasement, and reduce purchasing power. You see, so there is a real impact on us, and why we need to be conscious of the need to fully integrate into the global crypto community, which is expanding tremendously. I won't be able to take a deep dive into DeFi, but I would only like to highlight that this is a decentralized finance framework whereby smart contracts and other mechanisms control transactions and ensure fairness, as opposed to actual individuals and players in the space. So it's growing tremendously. It's allowing for borrowing, lending, and trading. And we can always take a deeper dive into what really decentralized finance means in the Q&A. But I just want to highlight that it's really democratizing wealth, and that it's giving us the opportunity to transform the Bahamian and Caribbean economies and raise our standards of living. And the Bahamas clearly can play an integral role in the setup of professional standards for best practices in the global cryptocurrency community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, for that comprehensive presentation on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and the current market in the space. I'm sure you've answered a lot of questions that people may have had on the current market on Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies. We will now move on to our next panelists, just for interest of time, to make sure everyone is able to get in their presentations, and we'll be sure to present any questions to Mr. Jones towards the end. Our next panelist, Mr. Marvin Colby, also has a presentation, and he will be speaking on RAISE, Africa's growth in the space, digital securities, and his experience as a Bahamian participating in the space globally. Marvin, whenever you're ready, you can start your presentation. Okay, it seems that Marvin is having some technical difficulties. We can move on to Stephen Delaveau. Stephen, are you ready?
Sure, I can go. Stefan, by the way.
Yeah,
Stefan.
Stefan.
Yeah, I was able to unmute myself. Sorry, Sammy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Marvin's good.
Yeah, it was telling me that the host muted me, so I couldn't unmute myself. But Stefan, if you don't mind, I can run before you because I have a flight shortly. So if y'all could hear me, Sammy, please confirm.
Yes, Marvin, we can hear you. Stefan, we can put you back in the same slot you had originally. Okay, Marvin, if you can share your screen for your presentation.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Stefan, again, thanks for letting me go first so I can make this flight shortly. Good evening and good morning to everybody. Greetings from Addis Ababa, all the way in East Africa, Ethiopia. My name is Marvin Colby. I spend my time between Nairobi and the Bahamas, and I'm currently in Addis Ababa for the time being. So today, Brian's presentation was fantastic, and the segue into this is about the future of financial services in the Bahamas, which is what I'd like to talk about today. Before that though, I wanted to say thank you to the entire team, Sammy, Deborah, and everybody who was behind this project to make things happen. The regulators and the regulation panel, and Brian, of course, for your presentation before, and having that very sweet handover to talk about the role of the Bahamas in the digital transformation of financial services. So as I was mentioning earlier, my name Marvin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called RAISE. Please, by the way, can you all see my screen? Anybody confirm? It should have like a slideshow up. Anybody confirming? Yeah. Oh, it's cut off. I don't know what happened. Okay, trying again. What about now? If someone could say it out loud, I'd appreciate, because I can't look at the messages. It back up. Okay, it's up. I'm sharing the screen. All right, Sami, as the host, can you see my screen? I want to be sure we don't have no technical difficulties, so I don't speak without the screen being visible. Okay, thank you. I could see you. So here we're talking about the future of financial services in the Bahamas. CEO of Raise is a company where we call ourselves as we build in Africa's NASDAQ. What that means is we build in a Pan-African stock exchange. And I can run through a bit of what that means as well as showing the product. So today the presentation is brief. We're talking on 5 topics: rebuilding the financial sector of the Bahamas, how that relates to growth in emerging markets in Africa specifically, where Raise focuses or where I focus my time and attention, what Raise is and how that ties into the Bahamian opportunity for our financial sector. And the first thing I want to start off with, and I'm grateful for Brian to being so data driven, is when you're an operator and a startup operator, everything is about data. When you look at our financial sector for the last 6 years, between 2012, 2018, 6 years, we lost $200 billion worth of banking assets in our financial sector. That's an average of $33 billion a year plus. So that's obvious that something is not working, that something is going horribly wrong in our financial sector. And it's pretty clear that something needs to change in order for this to be turned around. So there's many reasons I'm sure that many of us on this call who have much more experience in the Bahamian financial sector than I do could point to, but there's 3 things I've seen personally as an owner of an IBC, as a Bahamian citizen in the Bahamas. 1, expensive and tedious paper-based industry. It is too long, too expensive, too painful to be doing things. As a operator of a startup, we could pass all of the acts in the world that we want to. It is just way too painful to be doing business. The second part is that legislations for crowdfunding, DARE Act, as great as these initiatives might be, they move too slowly to capture the opportunities. In the startup and technology and fintech land, things move on a daily, minute basis. That means that opportunities are happening every couple of seconds. Billions of dollars are being created every couple of seconds. So every year, every month, every day, every week that we don't pass these things, we lose opportunities. And of course, the third thing that's kind of a relic of our past and reality is the blacklisting. We're getting blacklisted many times, arguably for no reason. So since things ain't working, and it's obvious that it's not working, and it's obvious that our industry needs to move forward into another direction, this is an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity. I've always seen it as an opportunity. Anybody on the call that knows me says I've been speaking about the same thing for a while. There's 3 things and 3 main things that I believe we need to do as a country and an industry to take our financial services sector to another place, which we've been talking about on the call today. First thing, a digital Bahamian dollar like the sand dollar, and a digitized corporate registry, not a paper-based registry, a digital corporate registry from end to end. The second thing is for Bahamians to be able to own international business corporations, smart funds, and a variety of different asset classes that we've previously provided for non-Bahamians to be able to create the structures that allow them to invest in assets around the world, holding USD currency and not necessarily only a BSD currency. And the last thing that I'm going to be spending a lot of my time on this is pivoting our financial services sector to focus less on America and Europe and focusing more on Africa and Asia. And I'm going to explain why. The reason is simple. The world and the global economy is changing extremely rapidly. Between now and 2030, $30 trillion worth of capital in private and public assets will be created in emerging markets being Africa, Asia, Latin America. And in many ways and very quickly, these economies are going to move from owning about 30% of the GDP in the world to accounting for literally over half of the world's GDP. So what does that mean for us? That means that we find ourselves in a flux where a lot of our financial services industry, a lot of the work that we've done, a lot of our client base, a lot of everything we've built is not of Brazil, thanks to a lot of people on the call. A lot of our financial services sector is not tied to these economies. I mean, two things. One, either financial services sector does not progress, or two, there's the opportunity that we can tie ourselves to a lot of these countries for the first time. And one of the ones that I've been extremely confident and willing to take sacrifices to prove is the African continent. So the African continent, as a part of this growth, by 2035 will move from being worth a GDP of $1.2 trillion today to $15 trillion today, due to population growth, literacy rates increasing, financial services and capital markets growing faster and faster. And what I see in that opportunity, what I present in an opportunity today, is that our industry, our entire financial services industry, if we move intelligently, intensely, and quickly, we could become the infrastructure for this, the African continent, and replicate that same model for Asia and other emerging markets. Because it's obvious that North America and Europe are not growing at the same pace that these countries and economies are. So what that means is that if we move intentionally, intelligently, and quickly, we move from having a deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars to capturing a market share of economies, continents, and capital markets ecosystems that are worth tens of trillions of dollars. And capturing only 1% of the market gets us that deficit back. So my company is called Raise, and I want to spend some time to explain what this has to do with anything. So in 2018 and 2017, anybody on this call that knows me or has had conversations with me knows that I've been speaking about this for a while. The African continent, Asian continent, Latin American continent are the future of our financial services. And in order for us to continue to support our middle class, which is squarely in the financial services, and grow our middle class into the upper middle class and into upper class, we need to pivot to these economies directly. I believe that so much that in 2018, I moved to the African continent, where I'm primarily based now, and I live between here and the Bahamas. But I moved there to start a company called Raise. An idea behind Raise and the vision behind Raise is very simple. We can build digitized capital markets, processes, transactions, mergers and acquisitions, investments, deals, any kind of thing in a digital environment that is not paper-based. Raise is all it is that Africa's NASDAQ. Literally, we're building a place where people can buy, sell, trade, and collateralize private and public assets with a focus on the African continent, but we take that model and eventually replicate it into Asia and Latin America, because Asia and Latin America themselves are investing into the African continent itself. So we've grown from one person to a team of 15 people, over 25 people over the next couple of weeks, because we've proved out that this model is working and the African continent is growing. So in order to build this Africa's NASDAQ, or this Pan-African Stock Exchange, we do it in 3 phases. Still in phase 1. Phase 1 is onboard as much data as possible on shareholders, on data on shareholders, on any kind of corporate structure that exists on the African continent, to become this repository. Excuse me one second, I control my computer. To become this repository, or a centralized repository. Wow, excuse me one second. Too many people, video, all this slowing down, everything. All right, cool. Phase 1, onboard as much data as possible. Right now, the Raise platform is home to about $200 million worth of assets on the African continent. We know down to a granular level which person in Nigeria or Delaware or Mauritius owns how much of which asset. That's phase 1, and we're still in phase 1. 300 companies on the platform, excuse me. We move into about 2,000 by the end of the year, because things are growing. Phase 2 is when we have all that data and we understand which assets are being owned where, who's trading what, who's investing in what, then we start to add on financing tools. So we allow people to invest in assets, to execute trades on the platform, which I'll show everybody in a second, the platform that we built. And phase 3 is when we build these financing tools, and Raise is processing hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions per month. Then we add liquidity tools on top of it. People can collateralize stock. People can collateralize their homes on decentralized and centralized financial applications. People can process an entire merger and no paperwork required. And the reason we're doing this is that securities and digital securities, and thanks to Samuel, my bio says I'm a digital securities lawyer. Securities are changing. Securities used to be paper-based corporations that people have and have papers to prove that they have, but digital securities is becoming more and more prevalent. People are moving stock using lines of code as opposed to paper share certificates. So what that means is that eventually the blur and the line between private and public markets won't exist anymore. So we're building this to literally create a bunch of share certificates that are electronic and eventually turn that into a stock market. So in order to do that, and please tell me if you can see my screen, kind of like a dashboard that says Blackstar Inc. Anybody can confirm either by voice or chat. I'd like to take us just through the Raise platform. Thank you, Sammy. So yeah, in order to do that, first phase is to get as much data onto the platform as possible. So what we've built now is a platform that digitizes corporate structures and ownership data across companies. So this is a demo of a platform, of a live version of the Raise platform in the market currently. And this is a company called Blackstar Inc. Blackstar Inc. is a company that is incorporated in Delaware. It has a subsidiary in Mauritius that has been automated here, so they can make share transfers to Mauritius if they wanted to, as well as documents that are automatically stored onto the platform. And each of the different members, users, corporate secretaries and law firms, board members and investors and shareholders all have access to this one account. Investments as investors or as founders or company administrators or transfers and securities of any like. But all of this is anchored by a capitalization table, which is a record of ownership of the assets on the company. So here what we're looking at is Blackstar Inc. has a number of different securities on their cap table. They have preferred shares here, they have common stocks, they have employee stock options, as well as convertible debts and different kinds of convertible instruments. This cap table and ownership registry is automated. That means that all of the formulas are always being crunched. So here, for example, this person invested $1 million on the cap table, took a 10% simple interest, and this is being calculated every minute. That means we're calculating on the digital security every minute, every second to be sure that things are accurate. And what we do is with all of these different entries, we're cataloging and keeping a track of who owns what on the cap table. And for each one, we create an electronic share certificate or electronic convertible certificate. So what we're looking at right now is a visual version of what an electronic certificate looks on the Raise platform. But if you completely forget this image, it's just lines of code. These lines of code say that this person owns 100,000 common shares in this company. And that means that eventually we're going to be able to transfer these things between people. So this cap table, this ownership registry, was the foundation for the things that we built next, which is a financing tool, as I was saying about phase 2. In this financing tool, we automated all of the formulas. This person knows that they're raising a $30 million pre-money valuation using $1 million. And here, their capitalization table exists and their ownership assets exist. And they want to view the pro forma capitalization table, which is what happens to the company's ownership after I raise that money, to be able to see who gained percentages, who lost percentages. Each one of these different scenarios becomes almost like a term sheet or financing terms in what we call the deal room. A deal room is an automated place for investors to be able to directly invest in the company. Blackstar Inc. here is raising capital. They build out their deal room with automated terms. They automate their ownership and cap table into the deal room itself this way. So the cap table is connected to the deal room. And here they're inviting investors to be able to come into the deal room. Those investors are constantly being tracked to see what they're doing, what they're clicking at, what they are simulating, what they're looking at to gauge interest. And when they invest into the company through the deal room, they invest, we take the cap table, we automate an electronic certificate, send it to the investor, their portfolio, and then we update the cap table automatically. This is specifically happening for private companies. There is no paperwork involved. Everything is happening electronically. The only time we deal with paper is when we need to file things at a corporate registry level, which oftentimes we do not need to do. So this platform was launched into the African continent in 2018. We spent 2 years trying to find product market fit. In 2019, we had $1 million of market capitalization on the Raise platform. Last year, we hit $50 million. By the end of this year, we expect to hit $500 million worth of corporate African assets. We're currently on 200 million plus. By 2023, we expect to hit $50 billion, so 6 years from when we started. And very quickly, and anybody who's built a startup knows that everything is about building an MVP and then distributing it. The Raise platform is very quickly becoming the platform for shareholder data and for financing across the continent. So even now, as we sit and have this conversation, there's cap tables and documents and companies being fed all over the continent: Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. There's a team of 15 people that only work on onboarding capitalization table data, and we've built some of the best relationships on the continent. But ultimately, what we're doing here is simple. We literally digitizing Africa's capital markets to put all of the public and private assets in one place. That means that Stefan or Dr. Jillian Bethel, excuse me, would be able to take a investment in a Nigerian company, a private company, take it and bundle it with a stock in a public asset in Nigeria and a public asset on a New York Stock Exchange, put them into one index, and then use that index to make money back to her, because the core mission that we have is to build financial independence for people. Why is this relevant? Because we've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this for a while. And the hunch when I left to move to the continent was that the only way for the financial services industry of the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean to survive was if we pivoted to the African continent. The hypothesis there was the only way we would pivot is if the African continent needed an offshore financial sector to process corporate structuring. That hunch was correct. On the platform, there's currently about 400 companies plus. Over 90% of them are currently incorporated outside of the continent. If they're not currently incorporated outside of the continent, they will incorporate outside the continent. The reason I know that is because we incorporate them outside of the continent. We literally have a service where we migrate corporate structures from the continent to other jurisdictions to create a subsidiary on the African continent. The 3 jurisdictions that people on the continent are going to, because that's just what ended up happening, is Mauritius, Delaware, Cayman Islands. The 2 situations we had where we tried to create a Bahamian entity, because I obviously want that to happen, for an African entity did not work for reasons that I'm happy to share. But that proved to me that, one, our laws and our securities laws are not set up to handle this kind of scale, like of the African continent. We can't scale to processing financial services for a continent of
Marvin, sorry to interrupt, but in just a time, can you get to your final conclusion, please, so we can get to the others. We're no ready over time, so.
You got time. I'm on the last slide now. So the short end of it is there's an opportunity only if we move intentionally and swiftly. It's not going to come through legislation. It's not going to come through talking about it too long. As it come through actually doing things in the financial technology sector, because our deficit of $200 billion is going to continue to grow. And there's an opportunity to create a market share on ecosystems and emerging markets economies that are worth and growing by trillions of dollars. So thank you for that presentation, Sammy. Thanks for that good timing of keeping me in check, because I got to run to the airport soon as well. But thanks everyone for the presentation, the time, for listening, and for the patience to walk through this presentation with me and everybody today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marvin. That was a lot of good information and a good global insight on what's happening in this space globally, and specifically in Africa. Our next, we'd like to quickly move on to our next panelist, Dr. Jillian Bethel. If you are ready, I know Dr. Bethel is excited to share her her perspective on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, particularly as it relates to her company IslandBit. So Jillian, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Sure. Sure. So let me just get to sharing my screen. All right. So thank you, Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Industry and Immigration, for the opportunity to speak to you guys. I'm Jillian Bethel. I'm the CEO of IslandBit, which is a Bahamian-owned and operated cryptocurrency company. What we do is we sell and buy cryptocurrencies, or we sold and bought cryptocurrencies. Our company was created to provide education on cryptocurrencies and access to cryptocurrencies for Bahamians here in the Bahamas. And I'm going to move through quickly, Sammy. So we did this through a network of 5 kiosks on New Providence. We also provided concierge services and education. We started our business, oh, I think I'm frozen here. Right, so we started our business in July of 2020. And Alia spoke earlier about the flexibility of policy and regulation among the regulators, namely the Exchange Control Department of the Central Bank. And unfortunately, we were hit with quite a rigid stick. In December of 2020, we were in operation for about 5 months when we were able to sell and buy cryptocurrencies here in the Bahamas. You can see the pictures where our kiosks were located in Fresh Markets, Kruger Plastics, our family company, and a bit later on in 2 other locations where unfortunately we didn't get to operate because we had to stop shortly after deploying those ATMs. But what I want to talk to everybody today about is our experience in those 5 months and be able to present some data that allows everybody to kind of see where Bahamians are in terms of their adoption, their propensity to adopt cryptocurrency, digital assets, and these things in the Bahamas. Marvin just showed what the potential is, and I'm going to show more about what the market is, what the market demands, and what the propensity for the market to adopt an infrastructure that we're creating now through the FitLink, FitHub, and through even some of the things that Marvin is talking about. So, so let's get into it. Yeah. So just some info on who used our services. Before we launched, we sent out a survey. I think a couple people in here might remember it because we did airdrop some Bitcoin. We sent out a survey to Bahamian locals as well as to tourists. That tourist survey was focused on the US, and I'll talk about that one first. So we had 349 responses to that international survey. 20% of the people who responded said that they use cryptocurrencies, and 25% of those people responded that they would spend up to $500 in cryptocurrency while on vacation. 15% of those respondents said they would spend up to $1,500 in cryptocurrency while on vacation. So that started to show us a lot of the fluidity in the market, and with using cryptocurrency, as opposed to maybe 6-7 years ago when everybody had crypto, but everybody was just holding on to it. And now we're starting to see some retail users of cryptocurrencies who are more likely to use these cryptocurrencies while on vacation. And when we start to think about the tourist market and the number of people that come from the US and start to multiply these numbers out, you can see that the market is quite big. And so with this information, we decided to start this company. On our local side, we had a survey that went out. We had 95 respondents. 42% of them said that they currently owned cryptocurrency, which shocked us. And we actually thought that we did something wrong in the survey. And I'll talk a little bit about that a bit later. And 78% of them said that they found it difficult to buy cryptocurrencies. 80% of the people who responded said that they used credit or debit cards to buy cryptocurrencies. And these are Bahamians or residents who worked here. And so even though it was the middle of COVID and we knew that it might be a while before tourists came in, we decided to launch because we had everything we needed to launch. And we decided to launch to get a baseline on where the Bahamas and Bahamians really are when it comes to acquiring these digital currency assets and using them. So we launched in July, and I'll talk more about what we found. I'll get into the transaction data later in a couple of slides. But what we did find was what a lot of the Bahamians who bought from us use cryptocurrencies for. So I'll start off with the more easy to describe things, or so I think initially we had a lot of people who were very excited about our machines and seeing our machines, because they automatically recognized it as a way for them to add to their trading stacks. We had like quite a few clients, and I know this because we spoke to our clients very often just to see what they do. A lot of them traded Forex, and the ones who traded Forex are surprisingly very young. We're talking like under 25 years old. They're looking for something to do and they trade Forex. But the only way for those young people to add to their trading stacks and what they trade was very difficult with sending money abroad. And you can imagine that's difficult for younger people, or trading buying cryptocurrencies and sending it to whichever platforms they use. The other side of the people who said they did trading were people who didn't even understand what the word meant. A lot of them were involved with multi-level marketing schemes that somehow convinced them that they were actually trading cryptocurrencies or trading Forex via cryptocurrencies. And so this is where, even though it was in place, a lot of our education efforts went into having people understand what cryptocurrencies are, what they're not, and how to identify a lot of these pyramid or multi-level marketing schemes, which are still very, very prevalent. And I think we have a lot of work as a cryptocurrency community, regulators, entrepreneurs and infrastructure builders. We have a lot to do in really educating Bahamians on that aspect of it. Then we had the Bahamians who saw the immediate use cases or applications. We saw local work permit holders who found it a lot easier to send money home. This is mainly people from the Philippines. We had, one of the things I'm proud of is, as soon as we taught our community, we do have a WhatsApp and a Telegram community. As soon as we taught them how to go ahead and find where cryptocurrency ATMs existed around the world, a lot of them came to us like almost immediately, the next day or something like this, to buy cryptocurrency and hold it until it's time to send crypto to their kids. So a lot of, not a lot, but I know of a number of parents who sent crypto abroad to their kids so that they could withdraw it abroad. And then we had a few businesses reach out to find out how cryptocurrencies can help their bottom line, especially people who people who exported in the fisheries industry. A problem that they had that they saw cryptocurrencies able to solve is their clients abroad sending money here. It took a little bit long in some instances because they would have containers of fish ready to go, but it might take longer for the money to clear, and they weren't comfortable sending the containers over unless the money cleared. So they saw this use case as practical, but unfortunately, a lot of their clients were in jurisdictions where it was harder for them to send or acquire the cryptocurrency. So none of that ever happened. But besides the fishing industry, we also had other exporters or people who wanted to just send money abroad, businesses, contact us for help on that, in that aspect. So what did our clients buy? I do not know where those transits came in, but we sold Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Dash, Litecoin, and one other, Ethereum. Far and large, everybody bought Bitcoin. there was a smaller number of Ethereum transactions, and I think we had 2 Litecoin transactions. Beside that, we did offer through our concierge service for individuals to come in and buy whatever cryptocurrency they needed that we didn't offer on our kiosks. And in those instances, we did have a few people come in for things like Tron and Atom before we stopped. We never offered a sell for Ethereum, but weirdly, in November and December is the only time that people actually sold their cryptocurrencies back to us. So a lot of the time it was people just buying and holding, I guess, cryptocurrencies. And I would think that's because they were holding it in a lot of the multi-level marketing schemes. So the volume of our transactions, and I think we have a bit of an issue here. So I'll just show here. So our transaction volume, this is our transaction volume in January. And I'm just going to slide through really quickly so you can kind of visualize the difference between January and when we stopped offering our services in December. And you can see that over time, the volumes of, and sorry, I know it's very small. Right here is the buy transactions. Right here is the sell transactions. And right here is the total. So if we start back over, you can see that there's a huge change from when we started and when we stopped. And I'll say this is under COVID conditions where we don't have tourists, and also we did very little marketing. So that was our transaction volumes at the kiosks. Here's our transaction volume, and this is, I know it's smaller again, but here's our transaction volumes. And sorry, that says kiosk, but this is our over-the-counter transactions. And this is from June or August, straight up to December. And December is when the sell transactions increased. So since we suspended our services, we have not stopped getting calls. I mean, the market, I actually had to turn off the phone for about a week. So I apologize to any of our clients who are listening, just to kind of focus on some of the things that we need to focus on now. But in this environment where there's a huge crypto demand, and I guess it's because of this huge bull run that's going on in the Bitcoin, for Bitcoin, in this environment where there's a huge crypto bull run and there's very limited access to cryptocurrencies, we found a few things. So the first thing that we found was that there's a lot more demand. And thank you, Brian, for giving that great detail on why to buy Bitcoin, because I'm sure the phones are going to be ringing double time now. And we found that there's more demand. And that there's an underground market that's being established, because now people see the demand. People are a lot more educated about how to use and how to buy cryptocurrencies, and so there's a huge demand. And our clients call us and they tell us, well, so and so like selling cryptocurrencies and stuff like this, and of course we can't do anything about it. The problem there, though, is that a lot of them are getting information and it's not reliable information. And it's in that lack of reliability is something that could potentially hurt our clients and the crypto industry here on the whole. I cannot see my last point. And my mouse is tripping, so just give me 1 second. There we go. Oh, and so because of this lack of reliable information, we see the multi-level marketing schemes, they're actually prevailing a lot. So what's been created through a demand of cryptocurrency, but a lack of access to it, is a lack of access to reliable information that's causing some unscrupulous things to really happen. The last thing I want to just say is that, we've had our interactions with regulators, and this is our idea on it. And because, we're talking about regulation, we're talking about legislation, and Christian has been so forthcoming and the whole team, obviously, so forthcoming with information from the FINTECH Hub. And so we see it as very, very important to have frequent interaction and collaboration with the regulators, so that we can, share data, and we can, look at what our mutual goals are and make sure that the industry, the regulators, and the market can all be malleable and start to kind of move things in the right direction. So I think that's my main presentation, but Women's Day is on March 8th, that's next Monday. So I want to wish everybody happy Women's Day, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jillian. That was a very educational presentation, and I know I know I speak for myself in that I'm looking forward to seeing more and hearing more about Island Bit and seeing its growth as more Bahamians and persons internationally seek to use and adopt cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So thank you again for that. We will now move on to Stefan Delaveau. He will be speaking about blockchain education, the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, and I know Stefan has been at the forefront from the very beginning, trying to educate people about cryptocurrencies and blockchain. I have learned a lot personally from some of his talks. So I am looking forward to hearing more about what he has to say. Firstly, Stefan, do you want to go into your to explain more about the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance first?
Yeah, for sure. I'll share screen. And of course, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for having me here. Minister, I appreciate it. All right. Can you see the screen?
Yep, you see it.
Okay, perfect. So just very quickly, this is just the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance's homepage. Just to give a quick overview of what we do. I think many in the financial services are at least somewhat familiar. But we're basically we're an NGO, nonprofit dedicated to promoting the adoption of blockchain technology in the region being the Caribbean. This is mainly through, general advocacy, education, and collaboration and regulatory engagement. So what we've been doing for the last few years is just, starting from very simple things like, regular talks. Pre-pandemic, we had a lot more, talks on the ground, just physical interactions with people who want to learn more about what blockchain is, what Bitcoin is, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something that's been good, but obviously there's still a lot more that we need to do. But what we've actually been doing in place of that is we've been having YouTube, we do live stream on YouTube, but we do talks with the general community, the people in the blockchain space, the individuals and companies who are really pushing things forward. Interestingly enough, we have a lot of people in our community, and what I really appreciate about this panel is that if you want to know what the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance is as a community, you see on the panel. You have Bobby Chen pushing central bank digital currencies, which is excellent for financial inclusion. You have Jillian Bethel, who's doing just general access and adoption of cryptocurrencies, especially for retail. And then Brian Jones, who's doing access as well, but more so on the fund side, like funds and finance, et cetera. Marvin Colby, who's pushing more on the capital markets, using blockchain to basically bridge the Bahamas and Africa for the most part. And if you look at all these different parts, they're really, they make up an entire ecosystem. And I think especially in the financial services sector, when you look at blockchain and how to interact with blockchain and how to, utilize it in different ways, you have to think of the full ecosystem. What needs to be done? What are all the important parts that need to be put together? So that's basically what we represent at the end of the day. And then we can go further into the education aspect, but I know you have questions first.
Yeah, I guess we could jump right into that. Speaking to your experience getting involved in the space, how did you learn, and what would be your advice to someone new to the space, or not new but wanting to learn more about fintech, blockchain, cryptocurrencies? Where would be the best place to start? What are the best educational resources? What can they do?
It's actually a great question. So for us, actually, this year, we're going to be pushing a lot in terms of education. I'll get into that a bit later. If you want to talk about my original, I guess, background, my background's in economics. I started, my career in finance. I started getting really into tech, and that was around the time that a few friends and I created Shift the Culture as a startup, not incubator so much as just a community group that was trying to push, and still is trying to push, just entrepreneurship to a large degree, and tech applications. So, and the further I kind of got into that, I saw the combination of finance and tech. And then I got really passionate about fintech. And in 2015, because I'd heard of Bitcoin much earlier, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. But in 2015, I started seeing how finance and banking was starting to look into blockchain as a sector, as an industry. And I really ended up, because I said, I was basically saying, okay, well, fintech is one thing. It still has its own limitations. It still has its own hangups that need to be evolved past. But blockchain is kind of pushing past it into where it's not just financial technology, which is what fintech means. It's more of economic technology. So so I saw it as more of an econ tech than anything else, as the next evolution of fintech. Because anything that you do involving blockchains, whether it's DeFi, which we'll probably talk about later, using it for public sector applications, there's so much that can be done with blockchain technology that we couldn't do before, at least not in a efficient and proper way. So, sorry, 1 second. Yeah, but basically, from that same kind of push into exploring blockchain better, I started. To be honest, I researched it for years before I really pushed my career into it. But eventually got to the point where I realized how important this is, and I wanted to spend the rest of my career pushing it, trying to organize people in the community, and just try to get more adoption for the Bahamas and for the entire region, mainly because especially here, we always run into issues with, larger countries, larger organizations. There's always a blacklist around the corner, just because even if we're doing everything properly, the OECD or FATF or whatever still comes and says, well, we still want you to change in a very arbitrary way. So I think for us, just generally building the adoption of blockchain to make our processes better, but also connecting it in a way with the rest of the region, just makes us stronger, because then we have more unity. We have more of a chance to coordinate with the other countries near us, or all our neighbors, and to create an actual block, which strengthens us and puts us in a better position to fight back if necessary, or at the very least know what and what not to push against. And I think that will be very helpful for us in the long run. And I loved Marvin's point about the connection to Africa, because I think, slightly controversial, but like he said, Africa's growing extremely quickly. And in 10 years, it's going to be the hub for, I think currently in Nigeria and Kenya, I know Nigeria's central bank is pushing back against this, but in Nigeria and Kenya, they have some of the highest adoption of cryptocurrency in the world. So just us embracing the technology and connecting with them at the same time, that's going to do a lot for us in the long run.
Okay, well, I guess in following up with some of those points, a couple of years back, when blockchain was the new craze, there's a lot of excitement about the potential for blockchain technologies to be used in the public sector. Things like land registries or even voting. What ways do you think we in the Bahamas can use blockchain and fintech to make things more efficient, more reliable, or just basically capitalize on the technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a myriad of ways, and just what you mentioned, the land registry aspect is potentially huge, because I can imagine a lot of people in the audience probably have had some issue with land registry before, or something happened with the title, something's being contested. So just having, because I mean, at the end of the day, what blockchain provides is the security, the verification, the transparency that would make something like that so much easier to deal with, so that there's no contention, nobody can come and say, oh, this is my land. You don't have ownership of it, because you can literally just go in and check the blockchain and verify that everything is as it should, which completely takes away the entire problem. And even in addition to that, you have things such as supply chain. After COVID, where global supply chains kind of failed, we saw what happens when, we saw how things go when that happens, and we saw how it affects our food security. Because if our supply chains and if our food comes from everywhere else, and we don't have more control and just more say over the global supply chain, we're left fending for ourselves with, and we're just left very vulnerable. So even a blockchain system for that, which again could be used to, transparent transactions, used for veracity, you can always ensure where something came from. You can verify where it is at every step of the way, and just having a bit more ownership of that, again, makes us much less vulnerable. And then just a final point, there is, so I think a lot of us have seen that the government has been, pushing a bit more the idea of microgrids with renewable energy, and to use of tracking how much energy is used, where energy is going at any particular point. It makes it much easier. And what you can actually do with that is, one person, say, for example, I have two large solar panels, you have one, and you're my neighbor. You have a higher demand, but you don't have you can't build up the amount of energy. So what I can do is I can actually sell that to you. And with the blockchain, I can actually easier make that transaction much more easily, just make a market where we're actually selling each other energy. So that's just 3 examples, but there are so many more. I think, to be honest, with Sand Dollar, we're going to see probably some more utilization of what we can do with it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, as an attorney, in my past experience in conveyancing, the title issues are a huge barrier. So having some greater clarity on land registry would be great, and obviously the other points that you mentioned. So I guess in terms of educational resources, I guess follow you and the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance. I know you guys do a lot, and you said a lot of talks and educational sessions.
Yeah. So in addition to that, what we're really pushing forward in these first few months is we recently partnered with the Blockchain Education Network and the Blockchain Acceleration Foundation. to help build up and start blockchain clubs. So we're in conversation with University of Bahamas right now to start a blockchain club. And to the audience, if any of you are students or have students that would be interested, please reach out. And we're trying to build up that community of students, because at the end of the day, blockchain is software. We need software developers. We need, and in a way where, you know, they're local and they can actually, you know, be in the Bahamas and work on these platforms instead of, you know, people having to hire developers from elsewhere, because developers in the blockchain space make a lot of money. So it's just a massive economic opportunity. So what we're hoping to do is build these blockchain clubs, use that for, you know, events, hackathons, things like that. And we're also partnering with other education groups like HAP, for example. But then we'll use that as a launch pad to push more courses in, get some blockchain and crypto related courses in the curriculum, and then we're going to expand that throughout the region. So again, pushing back on that idea of a block of the Caribbean using and building blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. So that's the main aspect of what's coming. In addition to that, we're going to have the regular talks that people can go to, find our YouTube page as well. And we have a number of talks that we've done on that front.
Yeah, great. And those talks stay up, so you always go back to the page and rewatch them if you haven't seen them live. Stephen, thank you so much. That was, you know, a lot of great information, and hopefully it sets a path for some people who want to learn more about this space and get more involved and continue to advocate for the industry in the space. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so our final presentation, and you know, even though he's last, definitely not least, we have Mr. Bobby Chen from the Central Bank. He is the architect and project manager of the Sand Dollar, which is the new central bank of the Bahamas digital currency, and he will present an overview of the Sand Dollar and its current rollout and its future. Bobby, I see you have your presentation ready to go, so take it from there.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to kick us off with a short video. So please let me know if you guys can hear the audio as well.
Okay. No, Bobby, no sound.
You know what? We'll skip the video and we'll go straight into the presentation in the interest of time, okay? I'll share a link to the video to you, Sammy, and then you can post it to the groups.
Okay, thanks. You can put it in the chat as well if you have it handy as well when you finish.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. So with protocols already being established, I would like to first of all thank the Ministry of Financial Services for the kind invitation. And also I'm elated to be a part of this dynamic panel. You know, it's more so I'm more proud to have, you know, friends who are doing meaningful things in this space with all the panelists that have presented in front of me, before me. I'm going to talk about the Sand Dollar project, which is our national digital fiat that was officially launched back in October of 2020. Some of the evolving objectives, you know, are one of which is to make the payment system more efficient, more cost effective, to promote greater financial inclusion, and also to just elevate the level of financial access to all of the residents unequivocally. As you guys all know, as commercial banks begin to retract and retreat some of their physical presence and physical footprint in the family islands, a lot of residents there are left without stable access to financial services. And furthermore, there is an increase in the cost of providing financial products through the traditional means. The fee structures on the services have increased significantly by the commercial financial institutions to recapture some of that lost revenue due to downsizing of their branch operations between, I guess, 2014, 2015 to modern day, to right now, 2021. And lastly, we also want non-discriminatory access to a modernized digital payment, regardless of your immigration status. Finally, we also aim to strengthen the national deficiencies against AML, against certain CFT rules, and other illicit activities that are currently being perpetuated by cash. Some of the I guess specifications of what is the sand dollar. People often romanticize the idea of CBDC to more than what it really is. It is truly just a digital version of the Bahamian fiat. It is no different than the substrates that are currently held in your wallet right now. It is one-to-one. It is not a cryptocurrency. The value does not fluctuate on the open market, nor is it backed by another underlying security, as in the case of stable coins. And I would also like to take this opportunity to address, I'm not going to speak formally on any of the legislative enactments of buying and selling cryptocurrency, because we do have a formal official communication that is forthcoming, and we are also revising certain enacting certain legislative reform to address that. But I would like to take this opportunity to remind Bahamians that there is currently no prohibition on investment in cryptocurrencies and crypto-related assets. Individuals that currently have and hold cryptocurrency can continue to trade and can continue to hold those as investments. However, due to the current health crisis, which negatively impacted our financial sectors, hence our economy, as a part of our conservation measures for our foreign currency reserves, we are currently suspending access to the foreign exchange markets via investment currency regime, the investment currency market regime. So market access will resume, I guess, once the private sector foreign currency inflow continues to recover over time and as our economy continues to rebound from the effects of the global pandemic. Some of the benefits, I won't dawdle too much time on this. I'll save the essence for our Q&A, but effectively it reduces the handling of cash, because as you know, printing, designing, and transportation and the security measures around handling fiat is quite expensive. And digital currency also provides fully auditable transactional trails to enhance transparency and accountability within structured regimes. It lowers merchant fees, it democratizes the market to where individuals can have access, small vendors, SMEs, individuals can have access to digitized payments, which effectively undercuts the fees to which we have to pay for other payment processors that are overseas in the likes of Visa and MasterCard. It produces faster settlement, so there is no need to wait T+1, T+2 for transactions to net settle as well as gross settle. Here are some of the security features. I won't go too much into detail on those, But effectively, we have the multi-factor authentication, which allows, which essentially every sand dollar configuration or usage requires a second set of credentials to validate. In my hand, I currently have a smart card, which is where we had originally introduced as a two-factor authentication. And if you press the button here, you can see that it automatically generates a scrambled set of codes. This would be the code to access as your second form of credential. Right now, we also do have a mobile authenticator that we've built, a private mobile authenticator that we've built in-house to facilitate a more digital presence and to have that ease of access over your mobile devices. Secondly, we do have wallet security. We do have very unique set of data encryption, as well as privacy and confidentiality rule sets that are built into our application. So any lost or stolen devices, all with the payment cards, your funds remain safe and secured, and the wallet can be temporarily blocked until the recovery process is initiated and finalized, or the relevant investigations have been concluded. Sorry. And then also, furthermore, I want to underscore that we currently do have a very holistic security review of the softwares, the applications, and the associated organizations of every participant that has applied to be a part of the Sand Dollar regime. The Sand Dollar platform has undergone a rigorous, independent, and cybersecurity assessment before all public releases. So it is highly secured, and all of our participants have essentially been sterilized before they are permitted to enter into this space. Some of our central strategies, I won't go too much in detail in all of them, but effectively, the one I want to highlight is the interoperability, which is important for developing the liquidity within the market for Sand Dollar. And the interoperability with other wallet systems means that all Sand Dollar enabled applications on wallet systems must be able to receive and send Sand Dollars regardless of the developers, regardless of the coding. They must have a set of rules that's able to interoperate between the Sand Dollar in-house wallet and any other external sort of wallet systems that are currently being offered to the Bahamian public. So to the demographics who can use the Sand Dollar, it's broadly broken down into three categories, one of which is business. Businesses are required to provide some proof of their regulated status, i.e. business license, VAT registry, etc. And then in the personal types, there are two categories. One is level 1 and the other one is level 2. Level 1 is geared towards the transient visitors, right? And also those that are unbanked, currently do not have a bank account with any financial institutions. They can benefit from very simplified due diligence, but they also do have very low wallet holding limits. And for the second category, which is the regular KYC tier, visitors can hold up to a certain amount, and we do expect most residents to reside in the middle category, which requires a bank account as well as certain KYC compliance, which you will see in this slide here. These are the limits that are currently being implemented by our KYC structure, our KYC framework. And moving on to some of our accepting payment methods. As you can see with mobile application, you can use your phone, you can use an iPad, but for larger operations, there's also the more industrial sort of mechanism that allows the swipe mechanism, EMV chip read, scanning of the QR code. So that is more flexible in allowing multi registry of wallets, multiple uses of wallets. And also we do have the smart card as well for individuals who may not be as tech savvy. And here we have an assortment of approved financial institutions that are currently enabled for Sand Dollar. You are able to go to one of their representatives or even download their applications and be able to receive, be able to sign up for a Sand Dollar wallet or a Sand Dollar account. And they'll be able to facilitate you, onboard you, and be able to provide you the wallet service and management sort of offerings that you would need to successfully operationalize your app. We do also have 3 incoming institutions, BOB, the Teachers Credit Union, and Island Pay. These institutions have been through our security assessments and are finalizing their internal processes to begin offering Sand Dollar to the public. So in the very short and the very near future, we do anticipate those 3 institutions to also be fully Sand Dollar enabled and interoperable. So with that being said, I'm going to, I guess, turn it back to Mr. Campbell, and he will wrap us up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bobby. I joked with Bobby earlier saying that he can do these presentations probably backwards now, but his expertise is always great, and his insight. We always learn something new every time with the presentations on the Sand Dollar, and I'm sure we're all proud that the Bahamas is leading the world with the launch of our own digital currency. So thanks again, Bobby, and continue along with the central bank to do great work. I don't know about anyone else, but I've learned a lot from all of these interesting presentations shared by our very knowledgeable panelists. And as much as we would love to continue with the questions, I know there was supposed to questions at the end, based on the time constraints. Unfortunately, we have to leave the conversation there. Surely we'll have additional forums to continue the discussions and to allow for more questions. I'd like to thank the panelists again for taking the time out of their busy schedules to provide their valuable and informative insight on this new and exciting. We are extremely grateful and look forward to seeing more great things from all of you as we continue to build the Bahamas as a global leader in the fintech space. I would suggest that if there are any questions, further questions, I know there were a lot in the chat, and we tried to note down as many of them as we could. But if there are any further questions, please, you could try and contact the panelists directly or contact the ministry at its website. And there's a contact us function that you can submit any questions, and we'll try to get the answers for you. And also don't forget to look out for the recording on our website and various social media pages. Now for some final remarks from the ministry to close us out. Thank you.
As we come to the end of the FINTECH Symposium, if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact myself, Anishka Lockhart, Financial and Trade Officer here at the Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Industry and Immigration. We also encourage you to continue to follow our Facebook page, the Ministry of Financial Services, Trade and Immigration, on the ministry's social media platforms in the coming days. We will now have the Director of Financial Services close out today's event, Mr. Deborah Watson. Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. I believe that we've had productive conversations with each of our speakers today. It is our hope that industry stakeholders locally and abroad leave with a clearer understanding of fintech, the regulation and its practice in the Bahamas, the science behind cryptocurrencies, digital securities, and an appreciation for the entrepreneurial, educational, and networking opportunities that's available to them. And finally, you would have also been empowered with details of our Sand Dollar and central bank's position on foreign investments. A follow-up link to a post survey will be sent to you. We ask that you kindly participate in this survey so that we can continue to expand our stakeholder engagement. Your feedback will allow us to improve on future events such as this one. Again, we'd like to thank all of our panelists for their participation today. We won't go through all of them, but we are very, very grateful to each and every one of them for their contribution to the discussions today. We'd like to thank our moderators, Ms. Dominique Nottage, the arbitration consultant in our ministry, and Mr. Samuel Campbell Jr., Financial and Trade Officer, who did an awesome and amazing job. To the regulator and legal panelists, thank you. And to our FinTech participants, you're doing an awfully wonderful job of making us proud as Bahamians in the local and international FinTech sphere. One last item, we just want to let you know that our sister ministry here, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, is hosting a symposium on March 18th, Manufacturing in the Bahamas and the Concession and Tax Breaks for Local Businesses. Please join Director Raquel Pinder in putting on this symposium. And with that, we'd also like to say thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. This concludes our symposium. Please be safe and have an amazing day. Thank you.